Thank you. One last question. You had talked a lot about innovations, primarily on the supply side, and relative to the demand side, those are fairly rapid, however you measure them. The question is, why do innovations leading to more efficient use of energy on the demand side seem so slow? Or is it just a perception?
Well, I think that sometimes as a society we give ourselves less credit for efficiency improvements than we really have obtained. The track record, if you look back at the history of 1980 to 2005, has been one where the world as a whole, that's developed and developing nations, have actually been able to reduce intensity by over 1%. It's about 1.2% per year on average from 1980 to 2005. When you compound that and look at what it's done, the amount of energy demand that it's taken away through those improvements in efficiency, it's a huge figure. I don't recall what it is in my head. We expect, as I said earlier, that that is going to continue to grow in terms of the compounding factor going forward. And I think the answer to the question is, why hasn't it been as big as we would like to think it was, is, well, there haven't been enough price signals in the past to stimulate the innovation. Or in some cases, there hasn't been a stable enough framework to stimulate the innovation. But when you look at what's, well, really in the labs and even out of the labs now, whether you consider even lighting, a lot of the world went to compact fluorescence a long time ago. And many of you probably know the huge efficiency that has allowed in terms of lighting a place. If you look at LED lighting, which is just out of the lab now and is available commercially, although at a price that none of us would pay per bulb. I looked at one the other day in a hardware store, and it was to replace a 90-watt bulb with an LED bulb, they wanted $109. Well, but we know, it's like with plasma TVs, and now you can get LED televisions. That technology will probably progress at the kind of pace that the questioner is asking about before. And I think we'll see that in all sorts of other applications, whether it's heating, ventilation, air conditioning, so forth. You're certainly seeing it in vehicles. One of the things that, as an engineer, sort of frustrates you from time to time is that the vehicle manufacturers, who have been much maligned for years and years now, the amount of energy efficiency that they have been able to obtain primarily through the development of the internal combustion engine, the use of different components in cars to lighten and so forth, has been tremendous. The thing is as consumers, what we've asked them to do with that efficiency is turn it into more horsepower and carry around more weight so that we now have, seats that heat ourselves and electronic gizmos on the side of the seat that rock it back and forth and massage you and everything. All the things that we've asked they put in, 6-stack CD players and all that kind of stuff. They've done what we've asked. They've made the vehicles more efficient, but we've asked them to turn that efficiency into more power and carry us around with a lot more weight. So we can change that, and they will start changing that, and we'll start to reap the benefits of those efficiencies rather rapidly as we start to change that demand mix. But consumers are going to have to want it, and that's the fundamental answer to your question, why haven't we seen the energy efficiency? When consumers begin to demand it, innovators and companies and entrepreneurs can innovate in a stable policy framework, we're going to see a lot of efficiency improvements. And that's why we in our energy outlook have some confidence in increasing the expectations for improvements in energy efficiency or energy intensity over the next 30 or so years.
Thank you. Thank you for a very insightful, stimulating presentation at this very first Imperial Oil Distinguished Lecture Series. With that, I would like to invite Jack Mintz back to the podium just to say a few closing words.
Well, I want to thank Andy for his excellent remarks today, reviewing a pretty complicated subject when talking about demand and supply of energy. I know we're all going to go back to our offices and turn on the lights and turn on computers, and we'll all remind ourselves just how important energy is. In fact, I remember a few years ago when we had the major blackout in Ontario for a few days. It reminds you how important energy is here to every one of our lives, and how much we depend on it. And I think that's going to be a major issue as we move forward on all the kinds of questions that we're going to have to deal with as a school, but really as a country and as a world in terms of doing that. And Andy, thank you so much for really going through, I think, a very good review of many of those issues that we're going to have to face down the road, and what the great possibilities there are for us. In fact, it's really great to talk to Andy. In fact, we had an opportunity last night, and in just a short few sentences, Andy can go from Canada, who he knows well because he spent time here in Calgary, but he can also talk about India and China and UK. It's tremendous background to be able to cover the world in that way, and that's really in part what this school is all about. We want to have that global reach, bring it here to this country, and for this School of Public Policy to make a major contribution to the development of public policy here in Canada as a result. And Andy and Imperial Oil, I'd like to thank you for your support in moving this mission forward, where I hope that this school will be really one of the outstanding schools of public policy in the world, and one that will deliver to Canada the kind of in-depth analysis of policy issues, whether it's in energy, environment, or some of the other things that we're going to be doing, but will help us move the agenda forward for a very long time to come, as well as educate, and this is the most important function, as well as educate those students who will be able to have a much better understanding of what's needed to create good policy and the processes needed to get there. Again, thanks all of you for coming today, and Andy, thank you so much for your excellent remarks.